Good morning, everybody. This is Zach said it again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and I'm happy to have my aunt, Pamela King, on the phone, and we're going to talk about one of our favorite people. Thank you, Pam, for being with me, first of all.
You're very welcome, Zach. It's nice to be with you. Sorry about the dogs barking.
Oh, that's okay. That's Chi-Chi and Amp, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And we are going to talk about a very special lady in our lives, your grandmother, my great-grandmother, Rose Tester. She would have turned 100 on the 21st of this month, and I have written something in my column to honor her, and so I just want to supplement this and talk about her. And the first thing that I would like to mention is that Granny Rose, and you can elaborate on this, Pam, any way you want to, but Granny Rose lived 92 years, but at the end, she was not ready. She still had stuff to do. And I remember, like, one of the last things she talked about was wanting to plan for Christmas.
Yeah. That's not surprising.
Yeah.
And she loved Christmas a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And she always had one on the list, just like things she wanted to do, places she wanted to go. There was like this itch that she always had. It never was scratched. She always, wanted to experience things, and I really have tried to learn from that.
Right. And, she would say, if you'd ask her, she would say that she didn't have a very interesting life and she didn't get to go a lot of places, but she did. She really had a very interesting life and went a lot of neat places with the senior citizens, and when she was with the testers, they took her places. And she really, her life was not as empty as she might have felt like it was in her later years.
Well, yeah, and especially for someone from her era, there wasn't a whole lot of traveling done when she was, a young person. Mm-hmm. It's not like today where you just hop on a plane anytime and do anything, And she didn't drive, so that cut back on a lot of opportunities to move around. So yeah, she probably did do more than she thinks. But, when you're like her, it's never enough.
Yeah,
you really just want to experience things over and over. And even like the night before she died, it was the same thing. She, I don't think she was ready. I know she wasn't ready. She even asked us, for water, and we're like, we can't really do that. And she was surprised and disappointed because she knew that was it. And
yeah.
I just felt it. I felt this angst, that she had more to do. So I'm hoping that she's enjoying the afterlife, doing everything she couldn't before.
I'm hoping so, because that is, talking about the afterlife, she was terrified of dying. She didn't think that she had lived her life well enough to deserve the rewards of the afterlife. And now, wherever she is, she knows whatever the secret is. And I hope most importantly that she is reunited with the love of her life that none of us ever knew.
Well, I don't have any doubt about that.
Yeah.
That is what makes it okay with me.
Okay with letting her go, because we know that she is reborn.
Yeah, she never ever got over my grandfather.
No.
Ever. It was, but think about how traumatic that was,
Yeah.
They'd only been married a short time. I don't even really think they
4 months.
that long before
4 months.
married.
And they were together a year. little over a year,
not very long.
and 21 years old, and he got cancer and died, and they found out she was pregnant the day of his funeral. I mean, that is just, if that isn't a Greek tragedy, I don't know what is. And he was everything that she wanted out of life. He was handsome and wealthy, and he had the ability to give her those things that she wanted, because, as you said, she was not if you grow up in Austinville, particularly in those days during the Depression, you don't go anywhere. You marry the boy next door. You don't leave Austinville. And her scope was much wider than Austinville, always.
I think you're right, and I think she also was such a beauty that she had lots of options. You know, she had a lot of men, you know, that were interested in her, and she liked that.
Yeah, and but she chose men. She chose her suitors by what they could do. Could they take her out dancing? Did they, and
she was no fool.
and Ralph, your grandfather, my great grandfather, he had it all. He was the whole package. She was the whole package for him.
Yeah. And no, I just absolutely love the pictures of him. He just seemed like he was the ultimate in cool. You know, tall, and all the sisters loved him, and he dressed so snappy, and I don't know, he's just I got it when I saw pictures of him. I understood what it was that she liked about him. You know, just from looking at him. Of course, no, I didn't know him. But from his personality, everyone says he was just an absolute sweetheart. And
he sang.
She told me that he gave her an ultimatum. Like, she had several guys she was interested in, and that, you know, interested in her. And there was one in particular I think she liked a lot, and he's like, you know, Rose, you just going to decide. It's me or none of them, you know. And she picked him, you know. She went for it, you know. It was a little earlier probably than she even was planning to do in her life. But
and after he died, she regretted, you know, not marrying him right away.
Yeah.
Now, and I heard, we were talking about earlier that I got to interview his only brother, Dean, who passed away this past year. And he told me that the testers were against them marrying, not because they did not approve of her, but they knew that he wasn't well and wouldn't be around long. You know.
Wow.
And,
yeah.
But
did she know that? Do you know if she knew that they withheld that information from her?
I don't know. He had leukemia as a child, and I think that she knew that he wasn't well. I don't know if she, you know, wanted to face up to how ill he was, because the Granny Rose that we knew had suffered the losses of all of her siblings, her parents, her husband, the love of her life, and she was very bogged down, very, very pessimistic, very bleak about the hand that life had dealt her. But what I understand from what Dean had to say was that she wasn't always like that. You know,
well, and you could tell too, because sometimes when you get her going, you know, and get her talking and having fun and being silly, she could be the silliest and funniest thing.
And she was.
You know, just a hoot, really, and you know, be a little ditzy at times, which just made it that was just endearing
Yeah.
quality that she had, honestly. And so, yeah, I mean, every now and then she'd forget it all and just let go, and you could just tell that, that she would have been somebody different. You're right, with all of that to suffer through. And just think about, having a baby and not having a husband, and you have to support the child, and you have to live somewhere else away from your family to work and provide for the child. Just her life was really hard in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I do think the testers made her life, they helped her.
They embraced her. They embraced her. Her mother-in-law would call her to come and stay with her, just to come visit and stay. And you don't find that in most in-laws. The testers were good people, and they really took care of her. He
also took care of Mama Tessa in her old age too, because
right. Yeah, there was nobody else, and I think there was one sister, Clara Nail, and I think the two of them took care of her.
Yeah. Yes, our grandmother stayed there in the house, and she worked local, but she stayed in the house with Mama Tessa, and she had a night shift. She stayed with her at night, and our grandmother used to complain about not getting to watch much TV because Mama Tessa didn't ever want to watch TV.
Mm-hmm. And Granny Rose loved TV.
But she didn't get to watch it much when she stayed with her, and that kind of annoyed her, I think. But she got plenty of it in on the weekends when she'd come back home to Austinville.
Yeah.
But
that's a very interesting thing, because Granny Rose loved TV. She loved the Law and Order shows and Dancing with the Stars. She was more up in her 80s on what was current, what was new on TV than I was. I mean, she
was probably catching up for lost time.
Yeah, I mean, she knew all those shows, and she watched it and knew about people on them, and
Did she ever watch Lawrence Welk with you?
Oh yes, I mean, every Christmas I looked forward to that cheesy show just because they enjoyed it so much,
Oh my God, so did I, and she loved it. She loved it. She'd comment on everything, every hairstyle, every gown, the color of it. If she didn't like it, she'd let you know that too. And she loved everything about it.
She loved the dancing. She loved to dance, and she was a good dancer. And
really?
Yeah, she was a good dancer, and she used to. Matter of fact, one of the gentlemen she used to go with was a dance instructor in New York, and she would talk about how that they would play, the big band music in the mood and stuff like that, and the people would clear the floor to watch them dance.
Really? I never knew that story.
Yeah.
You had so much conversation with her.
Yeah.
So many more than I did, honestly. When I spent the most time with her, I was young and distracted by my own life, know, and her and Hazel was my rock for sure, but, I just didn't know these things to talk to her about, and I'm so glad that you have chronicled a lot of it, because, it brings it all back.
Well, I wish I had chronicled more. I'm trying to get down everything that I can remember, but of course there's things that I've forgotten. One of the most joyous moments of my life was the day that I got her over here to see Bella, and we did that generational photo.
Yeah, that's so nice that you could do that.
The great granddaughter that she never expected. First of all, never expected me to have. Second of all, certainly didn't expect to live to see it. And she did. She lived to see me be married and have children, and to see that I would have a life as an adult that I think, we all feared I wouldn't have. And, you know, by the time Bella was born, she was Granny Rose was completely blind and couldn't see anything. But she kept kissing her and talking about how beautiful she was. And she was right, she was. And those were the last pictures that I know of that were ever taken of her. And and it was one of the first times in a long time that she really, you know, Phyllis rolled her hair, and Mom got her some nice red clothes because she loved red and green and bright colors. And
hated blue.
And and she looked like Granny Rose, you know, because you didn't see Granny Rose or Hazel. They didn't have their picture taken if they could help it without any putting lipstick on. Had to have that lipstick, and if you were Hazel, you had to have the pearls too, the lipstick and the pearls. But
they always did well, especially when they were not too far advanced in age, to really dress beautifully and sort of exotically almost. I see pictures now and I think they were styling. They really were. And
they both, were very naturally beautiful women.
Yeah, and very different from each other.
Yeah.
They didn't look much alike at all.
No, but they both had kind of this movie star-like quality.
Yes, absolutely. Grandmother had the most beautiful skin.
Yeah.
I mean, and I see pictures of her as a young girl and a young lady, and her teeth were so pretty, and I mean, she was quite the beauty.
She was.
Do you remember how limber she was? Up until she died?
Sitting Indian style in that recliner. Because her feet could. I've never been able to do that because her feet wouldn't touch the floor, so she would pull them up. I mean, this is a 92-year-old woman. Pull them up into the crisscross position in that chair because she was very short, only 5'2", and couldn't. Her feet wouldn't reach the floor, and it bothered her.
Either, but I cannot do that.
No.
And she had arthritis, but I guess not. Nothing like mine.
Yeah. Well,
pretty impressive.
And
then all her little Roseisms. Steve used to call them. All these little funny phrases that she had that just crack everybody up and became part of the way we speak to each other.
Right. Yeah. Because, and I try to remember all those. I'd go to a dog fight. I'd go to a public meeting and think about something else. And
he used to tell those in the department where he worked.
Right.
And eventually the people there, all his coworkers, would use those same phrases when they would talk about things. Like if they had tickets that nobody really wanted to go to because they got freebies, they would say, "There's a dog fight tonight. Who wants to go?"
Oh, so she was very popular around the office.
She was.
Had she lived, I think she would have been a remarkable YouTube sensation.
So do I. And I loved. Well, it annoyed me at the time, but when I think about it now, it was so funny to listen to music with her because she'd be like 2 or 3 beats behind singing it.
Yeah.
Because, she didn't know the words, but she would be like a second or two behind it, and
but she
watch a movie. She asks you everything, like what's happening there? Who's doing that? Just question after question, and you couldn't really watch the movie.
But I miss that so much. See, that was our thing though. If we watched TV together, that we were the commentators.
Yes.
And she commented on hairstyles or lack thereof, no matter what it was. And Granny Rose and Hazel, if your hair wasn't curled, it wasn't fixed. She could never grasp that people would actually go to the salon to have their hair straightened. Well, I don't know why they want to have their hair. It look like they'd have their hair fixed before they go on TV, knowing that they've probably spent hundreds of dollars to have it look in the way it looks. But
they definitely have their own ideas about glamour, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I said, And I would say to her, I said, I said, Granny Rose, you mean they didn't call and ask you what you thought of? Oh, I wish they would. I'd tell them. She wanted to be consulted on that. But you mentioned her singing, and she had the most beautiful soprano voice. That's what I miss the most. She was the only one in our family who could sing, who could carry a tune.
True, and she loved doing it so much, even if whether or not anybody was in the family was interested in it or not. It's her thing. She did because she loved it, and I think that's great. You can tell there was a motivation there beyond just attention. She just loved it, and she was a beautiful singer. She really was.
And I had the karaoke machine, and she was open to any type of music. And you talk about singing a step behind. She might have been a step behind, but she would give it an effort to sing. She may not have ever heard it before, but she would give an effort to sing that song, whatever it was. 80 years old and loved everything from the Eagles to Bette Midler to,
Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
He had me buy Lay Down Sally for her one time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, she always had rhythm. She was always moving if there was music anywhere.
She was.
In the middle of music playing in the grocery store, and them hips would be swiveling like anything. She didn't that thing dance like nobody was watching. She didn't care if anybody was watching or not. She was enjoying the music.
Maybe that's where we got our love of music back.
Well, I think so. I was always so amazed by her. I wanted to be able to sing so badly, but I always was so amazed by her that I would just play music and give her the microphone and say, "Here, sing," and I would just sit and listen to her. And
she must have really enjoyed those days that you guys just had the whole day to yourselves, just to talk and laugh and sing and be silly.
I miss it more than anything.
Yeah,
because I'm very grateful for those times. I'm so grateful for it because that was one thing about us. She didn't drive or anything, and I could never go anywhere on my own. So we both got that gene about if the car was moving, we was going to be in it if we could get in it. And we both liked to go, and I could go anywhere, and I would say, well, I have to go review this for the paper. Do you want to come? Or I would call her and ask her to come and stay with me. And she would come and stay 3, 4, 5 days, And anytime Mom and Dad went out of town, she was always there. And we had great times, and I loved hearing the same stories over and over again because if it made her laugh, I wanted to hear it. She had a really terrific laugh.
She did, and a great sense of humor.
Yeah, and one thing Emily said to me, which Emily ended up being very close to Granny Rose. In the short time that she got to know her, and she would go and get her and bring her to my house, and I'd get to have her at my house and have her eat food that my wife cooked, and that was really special. I wish that I had been able to. I wish that we had been able to bring her to live with us, because I would have made sure, or tried to make sure anyway, that her last years or months would have been happier, because she was so sad at the end. And, just tired, I think. And,
yeah, it was.
And it was
difficult to see.
it was really hard. And I never saw her cry till Hazel died. And then
The only time I did too.
And then after Hazel died, I would see her cry all the time, and it absolutely broke my heart. You know, because every time
she did become a lot more sensitive after that. She really did. It was always hard to drive away from her, and I'd look over my shoulder and see her face in the window, and
because you live in Raleigh, about 3.5 hours away from her. But you know, when we would make family trips down there, you can bet that she was there. She was right there with us, and she enjoyed. You know, we'd listen to music on the way down, and she enjoyed that. You know, and